Okay, sorry about that. For real this time, for reals. So I'm excited about this video. It's long format. Nope. So I'm excited about this video, mainly because it deals with a topic that's become near and dear to my heart the longer I've taught, and that is how we construct our practice time. How does the brain work in practice time? Many of you have been through my course, The Art of Practice, and it's all about your practice time and constructing that practice time so you can get the most out of it, because what I found over the years is that the professionals and the top of the top, the elite in any field, they practice differently. It's not that they practice more, they do sometimes, but they practice differently than the rest of people. And so that's really intriguing to me. And I have never met anybody that geeks out as much over this stuff until a couple of years ago at PASIC. And I met Marc. Marc is the Dean of the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And just very knowledgeable on this topic. He was giving us a talk on this topic. And so this past year, 2017 at PASIC, I sat down with him. I'm like, dude, let's just have a conversation. So I didn't want to edit this. I just wanted to put the whole long format up there. It's our conversation. The audio's not great. I learned a lot this last PASIC, and next PASIC it will be much better for you. So my apologies with that. It gets low in places and things like that. But I think that the content is very good, especially if you're interested in this topic of practice, in bettering your practice time and getting more out of the limited time that you put in there. Marc is one of the masters at this. He is one of the only guys that I've met that has studied this much on this topic in music, other than myself. And I know there's probably more people out there, but I haven't met them yet. So Marc is an extreme talent on the drum set. He's also well established in his career. Obviously, he's the dean of a university, and as well, he's very knowledgeable in this area. So I just wanted to share this conversation with you guys. Forgive the audio quality, but the content is really good. I hope you enjoy it. What's up, guys? This is Marc Dicciani. I'm saying that correct, right?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, awesome. And Marc is at the University of the Arts.
University of the Arts in Philadelphia.
Yeah, he's the dean there, and he's also killer player. Out playing all the time.
Thank you. Playing drums, love it since I was 16 years old. Got a late start, but never want to stop.
Wait, how old were you when you started?
16.
16?
Yeah.
Okay, that's right around the time I started playing.
Got a late start. But one of the advantages, I think, of starting late, at least for me, is that I knew what I wanted.
Right.
And so I was pretty focused on what I wanted to do at that point. Sometimes somebody starts when they're 6, 7, 8 years old, they're not sure they really want to play drums or why they're doing it. Sometimes a friend told them to do it or parents told them to do it, and they're not really focused, so they don't practice and they don't develop an interest. But by the time that I decided I want to do this, like I was into it.
Yeah. So how we met is really funny. So we went out to it was Aaron and Aaron actually from Tom and Zildjian invited us. We didn't know each other to just a dinner last year at St. Elmo's, I think it was.
What's St. Elmo's? Yeah.
And we sat there, and then after an hour we had been there, this guy comes walking up. I'm like, who's this guy? You know, and he comes sitting down, and so we all start chatting, and then somehow you get on the topic of what you were presenting on the next day, and all of a sudden, you know, I threw the word myelin in there.
Myelin. Yeah.
And he looked at me and he goes, "Wait a minute, you know about that?" I said, "Know about that." And from then on, it was like I think we bored the other two to death.
That's true. I had never heard another drummer talk about myelin, which is that thin coating that connects neurons. And why that's of interest to us is because as you're practicing and developing things, you build neural pathways. Well, the pathways are strengthened because these neurons, billions of them, are connecting to each other. And there's a little gap. And then there's this little sheath of myelin that sort of connects it. And the more you travel down this pathway, the thicker that gets. So when you're practicing and playing things over and over, there's an automatic neural pathway. This is how I like to think of it. Let's say and I don't ski, so
sure.
Forgive me for the skiers, because I'm not a skier, but imagine that you have new snow on a hill, and you're the first one down skiing. There's no tracks yet.
Right.
And so you create a little bit of a track.
Right.
You go down that path again, now it's a little deeper. And then 30 other people go down the same way. That's what happens with the myelin and the neural pathways. And it's built up so you don't have to think about it.
And it helps insulate that. It's almost like a high-speed cable.
And you know, the more insulated your cable is, the better the obviously the signal is. And it's very much like that every time you're doing that repetition. That's growing, and it's the white stuff in your brain. They used to not know what it was. They thought it was you know, like wasted space or white matter or padding or whatever. They just didn't really understand it, and then they started going, well, wait a second.
Yeah, the you know what you're talking about, like the MRIs, the level of technology and study in neuroscience through, you know, brain scans and digital imagery in the past even 10, 15 years is unbelievable.
Mind-blowing what they
like
can see.
more in the last 10 years than in the prior 200 years in terms of what we know. So all this stuff is new, but it's not yet made its way into the mainstream of how you teach and how we learn, because it's the same whether we're playing piano, playing drums, learning to drive stick shift, or learning almost anything, especially things that include motor movement, which is what drums is. We're moving muscles similar to dancers or basketball, sports, or other kind of things, piano, etc.
And what this helps prove is that there's no such thing as inborn talent.
Right.
There's no such thing, talent. You know, a skill. All skills are something that can be learned. You're not born a better driver than another person. You're not born. You may have earlier exposure to it, which has a lot to do with it, but it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with if you practice, how you practice, what you practice, in the order that you practice. All of these things help that whole process to happen. Which brings us to, we were just talking about this, the three things that I get, they're the three biggest issues by far. Focus is by 4 times, because I did a whole independent study. Before I met this guy, I was doing all these studies. Because I told him, he said, well, I'm like, actually, I've got this study from 600 drummers, you know, and we're sitting there geeking out while everybody else is sleeping.
Right.
And so the biggest issue by 4 times is focus and practice time. The second biggest one is I don't know what to practice. The third biggest one is I don't know how to practice when I don't know what to practice. You know what I'm saying? So they don't know what to practice, they don't know how to practice, and they don't know how to focus.
When I was growing up, the thing used to be, no, you got to practice 6 or 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And what we now know of how to practice and what to practice, if you're really focused in your practice, like you mentioned, you're spending 90 minutes to 2 hours a day. That's plenty.
Yep.
You're listening, because the other times when you don't have sticks in hand are as important to your development as when you're actually physically playing.
Right.
Because you're listening, you're understanding, and when you imagine yourself playing a particular pattern, your neural pathways and your neurons light up the same way as if you're actually doing it.
Yep.
So even when you're thinking about it, you're deepening those neural pathways.
And what they found is that those cognitive abilities, so goal management, focus is one of those, all in the prefrontal cortex. It's like a muscle. You only have so much of it. And so the study, the big kind of landmark study, the role of deliberate practice in the acquisition of expert performance, which is one that everybody, the 10,000 hour rule, all of that stuff came from that. What they found, though, was that everybody skips over was the amount of practice these people did wasn't driven by like, oh, I have 8 hours to practice. It was driven by the amount of time it took them to recover from the last deliberate practice session. And all that recovery happens with rest, with recreational activities, with sleeping, allowing you to do, and things like visualization, what you were just talking about.
Visualization, visual practice, thinking, imagining, virtual memory practice. You can spend a lot of time doing things, but sometimes I'll get a student who will say, you know, I've been practicing this thing, but it hasn't yet made its way onto the drum set. I said, it doesn't make its way. You have to take it there. If you're going to practice something, you need to practice it to music, 3-4 minute, 8 minute cut. You need to play along with music. That's your virtual reality.
Right.
Sitting on a pad or just playing on your hands and legs, that's not virtual reality. It may never make its way to the drums.
Yeah. And creating those consistent feedback loops in your practice time, where you're getting the positive and negative feedback, where each time you go back through it, you're correcting in a certain way or self-correct. So it's never just a mindless repetition. It's always, okay, next time I correct this, next time I correct this, it's always a loop of do the exercise feedback, because professionals, they just practice different. It's, Michael Phelps, it's not that he's this, he practices differently in his practice time. They coach him differently. Did we talk about his whole pre-race deal? Okay, it's really interesting. His coach said if you ask Michael what's happening before a race, what he's thinking about, he'll say, nothing. And he says that's because the whole routine is taken over. He said for over, I think it was over 10 years when I read this, and I could be wrong, still quote me, the details. But he said we developed a pre-race routine that was a couple hours long. He did the same set of stretches. He did the same set of warm-ups. He listened to his music at the exact same time. He stepped on the platform and you can go back and look at his races. He steps on the platform the exact same way. He touches this. He swings his arm this number of times.
Routine, so there
And
doesn't
then-
any conscious thought. It's just
Right before he takes his earbuds out and he sets them down. And he said, he said because he did his stretches just right. He did his warm-ups just right. He prompted himself the whole way. He said, why wouldn't you win his race? Because, and part of that routine was every morning, the first thing he thought of, they visualized. He said, you visualize the perfect race, how you're going through your routine. And he said, and before he goes to bed, he visualizes the same thing. He said, we've been doing this for over 10 years. He's the most decorated Olympic athlete in the world. So if you want to argue with it, you can. But I'm not going to.
not so successfully, but
Yeah,
you can.
exactly. He said by the time he gets to the race, he's been so primed and he's so in it that winning is a natural byproduct of.
You
It's
know,
just another. Why wouldn't that be successful?
It's such an interesting concept that sometimes when we practice, when we're not doing it right, we're practicing mistakes.
Yeah.
And the more you practice mistakes, the better you get at making them.
Yep.
The idea of having a 1-hour lesson and meeting with your teacher for 1 hour each week, if you don't know how to learn, you can be practicing incorrectly for a week, and then you come back and teachers know you didn't do it, and then you can still not get it right. That's what the feedback loops are about, is when you record yourself. Set up your iPhone.
Yeah.
Watch yourself do it. Teach yourself how to learn. And then it's not that 1 hour with the teacher, it's the 7 days that you're on your own that you're learning. It's that feedback loop. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and we were talking about mental imagery and practicing, and I said, so, like before you play, do you ever imagine yourself playing and think about the place you're playing and what and how you're playing? He said, yeah. I said, when you're imagining yourself playing that concert, do you ever make mistakes? He said, no, never.
Exactly.
I said, so there are neural pathways that teach you how to play. You're not making mistakes. So the more you think about doing something, you're always doing it correctly, the better you're going to get at it, the faster you're going to improve.
And these are practice-related activities. So critical listening, transcription, visualization, all these things are, going to live shows, dissecting those live shows. Those are all related to the practice time, which they found that those that practice, the professionals, they found 2 to 3 hours a day was what they needed to maintain it. Anymore, they found past 2 hours, they started seeing declining returns, and at 4 hours, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, they actually started seeing the opposite way, like we started going backwards.
Exactly right.
And what's funny, he said about, we talk about the rest time, and I get asked all the time. They're like, I left the practice room so frustrated, the next day I came back and I could do it. Or they said, I feel just like burned down, I can't do it, my focus isn't there. I said, well, your brain's telling you something. While you're sleeping, they go, hey guys, he wants to do this thing, we better get this together. I said, it's like a computer, it's processing all that
That hour
information.
before you wake up is called consolidation. That's where your brain takes the things that you did during the day and learned during the day and kind of separates, what you had for breakfast. That's not important. But the things that you're focused on and you're trying to learn, that's where it consolidates it. And then you can come back the next day or 2 days later and it's there.
Yeah.
But what I tell students, when you do come back, start it from memory. Don't start it with the book or the transcription or whatever. Start it from memory. Even if you don't get it right, it forces your brain. Sometimes going through that process can be frustrating, but it creates deeper learning over a shorter period of time.
And I suggest, in the same vein, I suggest to people all the time, I said transcribing parts, learning them by ear is one of the best ways you can learn, because you're constantly going back over and over that part and hitting those things. And I said, and you're forced to go, how to go, okay, it went like this, okay, let me go back and look, and then you got to write it down. I said that whole process is just your brain working through the problem. It's almost like a math problem at that point, where it's just figuring it out as it goes. And so that's, all these things are important, but those three things. So let's kind of get some takeaways from this for them.
Okay.
So focus. What's the best thing they can do to improve their focus when they're in their practice time? What's 1 or 2 tips you got?
Here's one good tip. Never believe that you can multitask efficiently.
You can't. It's task switching.
We don't multitask. There's no such thing. People think they do it, they can't do it.
And they think
Because
computers.
you're blocking one, it doesn't work.
They think computers multitask. They don't. They task switch. A computer switches onto something and off of something else. That's how it just
when you're
happens in real
practicing,
time.
When you're practicing, even if you can just focus for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, focus. Don't have the TV on. Don't be eating. Don't be trying to read. Don't be practice. Focus. And if you do that for 20 to 30 minutes, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Remove distractions and sometimes when you talk about concentrating, people think it's difficult. I got to concentrate. It's the exact opposite. You remove everything else.
You remove everything.
You remove the TV. You remove people talking to you. Don't do it, where there's 5 or 6 people around. Do it by yourself. Do it quietly. Do it relaxed. So focus is critical.
That's a great thing to bring up. And the thing that I talk about most with students is this thing right here. Because this is, we've trained our brains. They found that we're actually starting to self-interrupt. And they're finding that we're showing, so much of the population is showing signs of OCD, which is, if we get it, our brains can't handle boredom anymore. And that's what happens in practice, is the brain, it perceives it as boredom because it's hard. So when you stand in line at Starbucks, what's the first thing you do without even thinking?
Take out your phone.
And it's mindless for your brain, and it's interruption. So we have internal and external. So what he said about like how you set this up, it's very important that I don't check email before I go into the practice room. Because if I check email, there's going to be something in there that I think about when I go to the practice, and I'm going to self-interrupt myself. As well, while I'm in the practice session, even if I'm not going to answer it, I don't check the email, because then I'll be thinking about what I'm going to say to that person while you're in.
That's a great point. It's what you carry with you into the practice room. My family, like, they know within 2 hours when I'm playing a concert, don't text. You can text. I'm not going to answer. Don't call me unless it's dire emergency. Do not call me. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. You go into a routine because that's what you take on stage with you. You don't want to take a distraction. You don't want to take the email. You don't want to take, the dog has to go to the vet tomorrow. What time are you don't want to take that on stage with you. Or you don't want to take it in the practice room with you.
Or they're taking breaks, and their break is social media. And social media is the worst. Because, they didn't like it, or you get angry at a Facebook post, or all those things. And I love technology. Crap, we're sitting here with 18 cameras in our bags, and, I get it. But at the same time, when I go to the practice room, it's airplane mode. I don't check it before. I'm very protective before and right after, so that I can let that whole process happen, so that I don't have to spend 4 hours. It's just an hour and a half, and then I'm done. And then I can,
you're right.
Run the business. So, that's it.
You can spend 8 hours practicing and get the same amount of work done in 1 hour, 1.5 hours.
Which is really lame, Mark.
And actually, it's better.
I did spend that many days, that many hours in college, and so I think back and I'm like, those days where I'm like, I just got to spend 2 more hours in here, muscle it through. I could have done it so much better. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be, let's hit on the second thing. How can they figure out what they need to be practicing? Just give 1 or 2 maybe tips from your perspective.
Here's how I like to think about it. Maybe, let's say you're a high school drummer playing in a band, and you're playing jazz chart. Okay. You may or may not be that experienced in jazz. First thing you do is start listening. Understand the language, start to hear the nuances. If that's what I have to play with my band, then I'm not going to take out a pad and play triple pad of fla-flas for an hour, because that's not going to help me play that bassy chart. So I'm going to think, what do I need to play? What do I need to practice to play that bass chart? Well, I need to work on jazz time.
Right.
I need to work on balance between ride cymbal and hi-hat. I need to work on some left-hand independence.
Right.
I need to work on listening and locking in with the bass. And they're all 4 or 5 things right there that drummers need to practice.
Right.
So I create goals. I have my students create goals based on what it is that you're trying to do. Are you playing with a band? You're learning new tunes? Whatever it is, and things that you need to develop. You need to work on. You say, well, I think I need to work on my odd times, or I think I need to work on, bass drum grooves. Okay, then that's what you practice.
Yep.
You don't practice things that aren't relevant to what your goals are, because
you'll get distracted.
You get distracted, and it's the illusion that you think you're becoming a better drummer because you're putting in 3 hours a day, but everything that you're doing doesn't have anything to do with playing the drum set
Right.
to music with a bass player, with a band. You know, I listen to saxophonists practice. Saxophonists are putting on Soul records. They're playing with rhythm section.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you hear a drummer practice. There's no music. It's just they're playing on a piece of rubber with a metronome clicking, and they're playing rudiments. And I said, well, what's your goal? Because you're becoming a great patter.
Right. But what else are we going to do?
Nobody's ever said, listen, Mark, you got a session next week, just bring the pad.
Yeah, bring that practice pad. We're gonna hack that
Don't
out.
get me wrong, practice pad is great.
Right.
If it's used correctly.
And if it tracks to your goal.
If it's directly relates to your goal, then do it. Otherwise, our goal is to play the drum set.
It's true.
So let's practice more time on the kit.
Yeah. And I hit the practice pad whenever I'm doing something and I see a flaw in my technique. For instance, I noticed, I've talked on my channel about this, I noticed a couple of years back, these two fingers, finger control with French grip. I couldn't have the control, and I narrowed it down to finally, like, these two guys are just they're not doing their job, you know? And so I would sit there at the pad and not doing all I would simply work this finger. And then for months. And then I went to the next one. And that's how I troubleshot that issue. But I talk all the time about goals, and I tell them, I say, you know, not having a goal is like setting a road trip with some friends, and you take every exit. I said, we're going to go to Vegas.
You're never going to get
and you go to every exit. And I said, you may find some cool, coffee shops, but you're never going to get to Vegas.
You're never going to get where you want to go.
If that's where you want to go, or if that's the experience you want, say so from the front. Like, you know what? I don't know. I'm going to play.
Wander.
That's great. That's the goal. That's the experience.
I want to talk about something you just brought up, and that's troubleshoot. A lot of people play sports, play baseball. Talk about baseball. So let's say a hitter's in a slump. The hitter probably, if he or she is doing something wrong, and they just go in the batting cage and figure, I'm just going to go in the batting cage for 3 hours, and I'm going to work it out.
Right.
You just may be practicing and getting better at the thing you're doing wrong. What you talked about troubleshooting is it could be, where exactly is my left elbow? Let me have an instructor look at what I'm doing. Let me put a videotape on, is it my left elbow? Where's the position of my hands? Where's my shoulder? Where's my head? Do I need glasses? Am I not balanced right? But just to go in and to say, I'm not playing that well, I'm going to go sit down at the drums and work it out. You have to have those specific goals. Like you said, you troubleshot and figure, okay, it's these two fingers. It's the length of my skip note in jazz time.
Right.
It's the balance between and you get those things by what you mentioned before, which is feedback loops.
Right.
Listen to yourself or get a qualified instructor that says, here's what you specifically need to work on, and here's some exercises to help you with that.
Right.
Troubleshooting, and like I said before, and you mentioned it as well, my goal as a teacher really is to help the student learn how to teach themselves.
Yeah.
Learn what to listen for, what to watch for, that they can create their own practice routine. But it's not just sitting down at the drum and say, I'm going to play, my job today, I'm going to learn to play jazz better. Okay.
Right.
There's 15,000 different elements to jazz. You want to talk about high hat with left foot. You want to talk about left hand interdependence. You want to talk about jazz time. You want to talk about at what tempo.
Right.
That's another thing. Students practice and they practice everything at 110, 120 beats a minute. And then when they have to play at 220 beats a minute,
Or 50.
or 50, they take what they practiced at 120. And here's what I tell students, and it sounds weird, but what I tell them is, don't think that 200 beats a minute is faster than 120 beats a minute. Think that it's different.
Right.
Because if all you try to do is take what you can play at 120 and squeeze it into 200, that's a different language there.
Yeah.
Or take what you play at 120 and slow it down to 50, it's a different language.
And it's
the only
funny.
way you do that is practicing and listening at those tempos.
It's true, and I've taught so long on video with the drum lessons that I do. I'll get into a live streaming lesson, and in my mind, I'll go, oh man, I've got to demonstrate this at 40 BPM. And it will be something I have played since I was 14. And I'll go, oh man, that's good. I'm trying to talk to them while I'm thinking in my head, I should have ran this at 40 BPM because I ran it at 70 BPM, but I didn't go all the way down to 40. And so I get into it and I may flub once and I'll go, sorry about that. This is harder to retro. It's harder to go back and
They're the hardest
and do
tempos.
that. So it's
The hardest tempo.
you have to practice it at all tempos. But that's a great point. So anyway, Mark and I. See, we did last year.
Yeah,
we bored the entire
geek-
restaurant,
we
and
geek
then
out
another,
on the
and then we went to another place and also bored the So we didn't just do
this
one
is our
restaurant.
geek stuff. But the important thing is that in some ways, some areas drums are still being taught like it's 1960.
It's a new instrument.
It's a different instrument, different role, and we have all of these learning tools, and now we have all this science and medical research that says this is how your body moves, this is how your brain works, this is how your nervous system works, this
Right.
is how these things coordinate. And in some regards, the such a contemporary and modern instrument like Drumset is sometimes in the dark ages with how it's taught, because it's almost like drummers live in a different universe than the rest of the world. No, we don't need science. No, we don't need medicine. No, we don't need neurology. We don't need all that. We're playing drums. Get the pad out, get the rudiments, get the metronome, and we're all good to go.
Right.
And then drummers play for 10, 12 years, and they can't sit down and just play a solid groove.
Right.
You're right. It's not about talent. It's about focus, figuring out what to practice, and what to practice is pretty simple. It's you want to play the drum set better, you want to learn all styles, you want to listen to music. They're your goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not
the
that
great thing
hard.
about goals is once you set them and hit them, you set new ones. So you don't ever have to be overwhelmed. You just have a constant running list of goals. I have a list that's longer than I'll ever make. Like I'm gonna die, before
Right.
I hit all my goals. Because I play a 3-note sticking, and I'm like, I could work for years on this. Like this 3-note sticking could take me a long time. So don't feel like you're behind, or look on YouTube
No.
and see a video, and don't get sidetracked. Set those goals and then track to them. And because there's nerds like Mark and I out there
Yeah.
that study this stuff and know it works if you do it.
You know what? We're all. It's a long road, and the road never ends. We're all somewhere on that road of drummers, whether we're playing 30 years, 40 years, or 30 hours. We're all somewhere on that road, and once you learn this, you realize all the other things that you're never going to learn, or do your next things. And then you get here, and you realize, whoa, I'm never
Yeah.
going to get this right.
Yeah.
And that's the fun of it. That's why we do it.
I mean, Tim and I, you can't see him, he's behind the camera. Tim and I just went to a clinic, and you were in it too, weren't you, with Rue Jones?
Yep.
And it's some cool stuff that's happening between hip hop and jazz, and it's like what's
Very
going
creative.
on the streets. And it's something I'm sitting there going, oh man, that's gonna take me years. It's something in the back of my head going like, that would be cool to learn, but I know the time investment that's going to take, and it's like, I'm gonna add it to my goals. Just put it in there, and eventually we're gonna get to it. So
Yeah, it's a cool thing, because when you hear drummers like that play, it's not about tradition. It's about let me get inside the instrument. Let me get inside the music, and instead of saying why I should do this, let me think, why not?
Yeah.
Why not try this? I mean, from the way he had his drums set up to how they were tuned, and it's so I've never seen a setup like
No.
that. I've never heard anything play like that. So he's at the frontier.
he is, and he would
Breaking new
drop from a glitch beat into a James Brown beat just like that. From that, he would go into more Hendrix style. It was I love it. I love discovering new things. So don't ever feel like you're like too behind or not going to
No.
make it. That's what I hear a lot from people.
Find
So,
your own voice, be creative, experiment, have fun,
absolutely.
get something to eat, go to bed, wake up and do it again.
Now, where can they learn? You got a website they can go
I got
to
a
and check
website.
out?
Yeah, I got a bunch
is
of
it?
articles and things, and you can contact me through the website. It's just Dicciani, which is DICCIANI.com.
Yeah, go hit him up there, and see
Yeah,
what all-
contact me. I got
see what's
articles.
going on.
This is a pretty cool article.
This is from Modern Drummer, isn't it? Yeah, there you go. Is that the one
That's
you
from,
did for?
I did this about a year ago on Modern Drummer. It's about some of the things we're talking about with motor pathways and neural learning and imagery and different ways to practice. That's on the website. Just email me if you have questions, and email me if you disagree, and you can have a pretty interesting discussion about things. And like I said, with all these things with neuroscience and cognitive psychology and genetics, man, we're just scratching the surface with this stuff. So we're learning new things every day, and we're researching and finding new things every day. So that's what's exciting for us. I know it's exciting for you.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't have the answers. It's just, I think we're where we are, and why we're geeking out is because, and it's kind of interesting in that it's similar to what Dara's doing, in that we're just trying to forge new areas and ask a lot of questions and not just accept tradition, but try to break some new ground. So don't be afraid to challenge us and say, well, why do you think this way, or where's some, can you tell me some places I can go to read more about this, or can I, correspond with you, or I think you're an idiot. You have to tell me anything, that's fine. So.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for taking the time to sit down.